Folks. Okay, tear yourself away from those cupcakes and the smoked salmon. Welcome back. We've got the home stretch here, and we've got a couple talks from ARIN. First, I'd like to make an announcement from our friends at the IATF. I think a lot of people know about this, but just for those of you who don't, the Interim CIDR Working Group meeting is happening. Now that's CIDR with an S, S-I-D-R, Secure Interdomain Routing. And those are the people that are putting together, trying to secure BGP and doing a lot of the work on RPKI and a lot of that stuff. And so it promises to be very interesting. Operators from NANOG are invited. They want to get people in the operations community involved. That meeting is happening today, this afternoon, starting at 1 p.m. So about a little more than an hour after we break. That meeting will be happening, and it's going to be at the Harbor Center campus of Simon Fraser University. The full details, you can either see me if you want to get the full details of it. You can see Sandy Murphy, who's waving in the back right there, or Randy, or anyone else whose name rhymes with Sandy or Randy. They will know where to go, and the information is also posted to the CIDR mailing list and to the CIDR wiki that's linkable from the IATF website. So feel free to show up. I'll be there, so you can hang out with some other operations folks. Okay. And with that, I would like to introduce Mark Kosters, the CTO of ARIN. He's going to give the ARIN update.
Thanks, Michael. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is our 2012 focus for ARIN? Well, we have a bunch of things. One is, I don't know if you all know this, but we're running out of IPv4 addresses.
No. Say it isn't so.
I knew you guys would be shocked. So one of the things that we're doing is we have a plan in place, a V4 depletion plan that's been talked about at the ARIN meeting. And we're continuing with our V6 outreach. And we're seeing a lot more sort of stresses and stretching going on with V4 transfers. Meanwhile, while that's all going on from the sort of the policy, the P word front, from an engineering perspective, we're looking at continuing our ARIN Online development, RPKI development, and finally we're dealing with continued participation in the Internet governance forums. Now, one of the things that was kind of exciting for me this week was actually hearing about some of the things that's going on within the ITU and that this is brought forth to this community, because it's important for you all to understand the stresses that are going on, not only with V4 depletion, but also with the governance issues. And these things are important for all of us. ARIN, ISOC, and a bunch of other communities are involved with the ITU and seeing what they're doing as well as I can. But it's important for all of us to understand and to realize the implications of what changes could occur. V4 inventory. This is how much we have left, 4.37/8 equivalents. So we still have some addresses left. We also have 4.82/16 equivalents of return space that will be reissued at some point. We also have 1/10 reserve that's used for dedicated V4 block for V6 deployment. Basically some sort of natting, I would assume. Here you see some first quarter of our 2012 V4 address and assignments in terms of what's given out at ARIN. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is we had spikes, a little bit of ebbs and flows, and it's starting to rise again. So we're starting to see a little bit more demand for V4 space. A lot of this has to do with, as part of the V4 runout plan, is that the window of space that you could receive from ARIN changed, and that has actually drastically changed the amount of space that ARIN's given out as a result. Here you can see V6's allocations and assignments, fairly flat. So we had a spike right when the last /8s were given out from IANA to the various regional registries, but from there on out it really kind of diminished and it's kind of flatlined again. And here you can see out of the little over 4,000 subscribers that ARIN has within its region, that you can see that a predominant majority of these only have V4 space. And that 34% or 1/3 actually have V4 and V6. We certainly like to see that rise, where there's more people that actually start using V6 as well. So if you do have V4 and you want to have V6, now's a good time to get it. We have a number of policies coming out the door. One is a global policy for post-exhaustion V4 allocation mechanisms to IANA. And what this allows us to do is if we have return space, we can actually in turn give it back to IANA. There was no policy in place to make this happen before. And IANA in turn can give it back to the regional registries. We also have a number of transfer sort of policies that are going forth, and John's going to talk more about these. We have inter-RAR transfers going from region to region. There's a policy put in place that's be talking about that. There's clarifying requirements for V4 transfers, and one of the things that it has is really this idea of you can't flip. So if you get V4 space and you go around and try to sell it the next day, that's just not a good thing. And also ASN transfers. Here are a litany of proposals that are on the table right now. A lot of it sort of cleanup work on V6 allocations and a bunch of other things you can read about as well. Now, what I'd like to talk about is some of the development efforts, and this is really sort of what's near and dear to my heart. One of the things that we're trying to do within ARIN is doing a bunch of cost reduction sort of things. So one of our bigger cost drivers is actually running Oracle, and we'd like to move it to Postgres. And that is something that we're actually have on the books and plan on doing. We also use Red Hat JBoss, and we're moving to JBoss Community Edition, which goes, that also is going to reduce our licensing costs. This is pretty substantial for us, and we look forward to actually doing this. The JBoss stuff is what we're doing right now, and we'll be rolling it out at the end of this month, actually next month. ARIN Online, we're starting the billing integration. Who's actually tried to pay for stuff through ARIN? Okay, it's not pleasant, is it? You have to remember a bunch of things that you shouldn't have to remember. This is one of the things that we're also going to fix, is that we're going to make this seamless. And so this is something that especially the billing department within ARIN would really like to see. We've implemented a Who Was service, and we have a bunch of V4 runout tests that we have to do. So here's what I want to do. I kind of want to segue into two different things. One is RPKI, and another one is Who is RWS. Definitions for RPKI. There's two terms I like to use here. One is hosted, and this is the term where the keys, this is all managed by the regional registry. The keys are held by the regional registry. You go ahead and just manipulate the data as you wish. And we generate a repository based on the selections that you have made for ROAs or whatever else. The delegated model is different, where it's actually managed by the ISP. Keys are held by the ISP. And you have to run your own certificate authority within it. You have to do a lot more work to make that happen, but a lot of ISPs actually want to do this themselves. And they will actually only hold the information that they have as well as their downstreams. We are working on the hosted solution, plan on having it out this year. One of the things that's actually made it difficult for us is we had to move to a programmable HSM. And I talked about this before, but this is just really tedious work, making these programmable HSMs actually work in a very correct way. Once the hosted solution is deployed, which we anticipate be later this year, we plan on then moving on to the delegated solution. We're also participating with the other regional registries on a global trust anchor with ICANN. This is something that the IAB within the IETF has asked for, and we're actually going to implement as well. We're also participating with the other regional registries now that we have a global transfer process that we can actually deal with. So, can you play with RPKI today? Yes, we're not in production within ARIN, but if you're in the ARIN region, you are on par with the other regions in terms of being able to play with this right now if you want. So what I'm going to do is, if you bear with me for a few minutes, I'm going to walk you through the steps that you can take to actually start playing with us. The first part is actually registering with our pilot. You create a bunch of ROAs. You pull down a validator. There's a number of them out there. I'm going to use RIPES as an example here in a little bit. And you compare with the routes that you received and see if they're validated or not. So this is something you can do today. So we've had this pilot since 2009. It's an ARIN-branded version of RIPE NCC software. It's not integrated with an ARIN Online. So once the data is in there, the I will transfer from our registry database into the system. That is what you'll be playing with. And once you play within this pilot, that information that you put in, basically those ROAs, will not transfer into production when we do go into production. So this is a great way of doing some experimentation. We currently have 55 plus organizations participating. I get a couple every day. And you can go ahead and experiment now. One of the things based on Randy's comment at the last NANOG meeting is our trust anchor is now publicly available in a more transparent manner, and you can actually find it on that particular URL on the ARIN's website. So you go ahead and request your account, and you go to the pilot website. You'll get a user and ID via password, a user ID and password via email, and I'll go ahead and load the resources in, and at that point you can start loading up your ROAs. At that point you want to grab down a validator, and the example I'm going to use is RIPES validator. It's a very nice turnkey sort of system that you can use, and what I like to do at this point is go through a preview. So you pull it up, it brings up basically a JBoss instance running on your local machine on port 8080. And this is, when you first come in, this was what you see. And you can play around with it a little bit. And one of the things you can see is it actually pulls in a bunch of information through RIPE's risk system, route information system, and you can actually see a bunch of routes that's within their system, and you can see, well, you really can't see whether or not it's valid or not. If you pull it down, you will be able to see it, but it's a little bit too coarse on this screen. What you can also do is you can also see the validated ROAs that have been put in per region. For example, within ARIN's region, there are over 100 ROAs that have been transferred that you can see through the validator that are part of the pilot. And all these things are all integrated and packaged within RIPE's validator system. All you have to do is just go ahead and load it up, and it actually does all the magic for you. So you can actually start seeing this stuff right now if you wanted to. Now I want to move on to who is RWS. What this is this has really started the WEIRDS effort within ITF that Tom talked about a little bit earlier. We've had a pretty good run on traffic. We've had multiple highs within 2010 and 2011. Right now we're running about 475 queries per second, which is a good number. But one of the interesting things is that the RESTful calls that we have overtaken port 43 calls. And it's by a substantial margin now. And I'm going to have a graph about this a little bit later. But it's pretty cool to see that this old antiquated WHOIS directory service is now being supplanted by a new and cool system that all engineers like to use. So here you can see our graphs on port 43. Here you can see our graphs on dealing with WHOIS RWS on V6. What's interesting is we're now getting close to 1% of our total traffic coming across V6. So we can now say we're part of that 1%. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the port 43, that's this crufty system that we had, which is firmly established, and everybody has a WHOIS client that talks port 43, is now being supplanted by RESTful calls. And here's the graph that shows it. And you can see that the green is the total number, the orange is the RESTful calls, and over the last couple of months is overtaken what's actually seen on port 43. So I think this is, to me, this is really cool to see, having a core service being replaced by a newer service. Here's where our upcoming meetings are. We have one in Dallas, And given from the picture, it looks like it's going to be a warm and sunny place in the spring of 2013. So we encourage you to come to both. It's an important time for you as a community. It's an important time for all of us seeing this V4 runout stuff go on and what's going to happen next. Any questions? Awesome.
Okay, thank